Hello, world.
Fellow Valentin, I am
yeah,
World.
your your world. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Good. How's life in Montreal?
It's getting warm. This is our version of summer. So our 2 week spring is over, and now we are in summer. It's the way it is.
I need to visit Montreal, man.
Oh,
Uh,
totally,
never
totally.
been to Vancouver though, and I really liked it. Um, so no, I don't know if Montreal is something like that, but
So it's got a different vibe. It's got a different vibe. We gotta give. I'm gonna try and come up with a reason for people to come to Montreal. I'm working on a secret project, so maybe we'll reveal that sometime soon.
you can do free T-shirts or something like that. Like if you visit me in Montreal, you get free T-shirts or an AC hackathon maybe or a I don't know AC competition or something.
Yeah, and we definitely have to serve you old poutine, or
Yeah,
what do you call them, cheese fries in the United States.
yeah. I don't know. To be honest, I don't even know what's the typical thing in Canada. It's like French fries, right?
No, but in Montreal, like the iconic dish is called poutine, which is
Poutine.
French
What's that?
fries. Poutine is French fries with cheese and gravy.
Interesting.
We have a few other iconic dishes, but that's one of the ones that's most
That's
famous. Like
that's the
that's
most
something
famous.
that Anthony Bourdain had when he came up here. Yeah,
Interesting. I'm gonna try it when I visit you there for sure.
and then you can also compare our
Um,
bagels to to New York bagels and see which ones you prefer.
we don't get many bagels here in Miami, so but interesting topic we have today, man.
Mm.
I think there's gonna be a lot of debate because the vision you have regarding open source is completely different to the one I have. Um, so I think it's gonna be interesting.
Yeah, I completely
Um,
agree. I have a very complex relationship with open source, and I have some really interesting stories. And I think there's no be kind of surprised that I don't have a single viewpoint on it. I'm actually of two opposing minds at the same time. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting discussion.
maybe we can start with because I think it's a broad topic, right?
Yeah,
It's something that varies not only depending on the industry. I think there are variations depending on the industry, but also variations depending on who's doing the open source. It's not
yeah,
the same if you are, let's say, the owner of a product or you have a startup and you want to open source your whole business than a side business. Like I'm gonna do small app and I'm just gonna do it open source because I don't know to see if it is useful for somebody else. So maybe you can split it in two different groups, right? Maybe like let's say business and like independent, like devs or something like that. I don't know if
hmm
that makes sense to you.
yeah, for sure, for sure. But even within businesses, you have like different business models. You have some business models that are, their core, everything they do is open source. Their identity is wrapped around being open source. Uh, you have businesses that take open source and repackage it and present that to the users for profit. And it's interesting too also to talk about the consumption of open source code. You know, uh, because I think there's one of the interesting things. A lot of everybody consumes it. Like it is pervasive. Open source code.
Yeah, well, there's something that it's really interesting. Everybody consumes it. Only people who know how to manage code consumes open source.
Hmm.
I mean, because people think that when you're doing open source, that means anybody can use it. But sometimes you need to compile it, deploy it. Like you need to do a lot of technical things, technical actions that most people don't know how to do.
Yeah.
So I think that's the first point that for me, it's not for the whole world. It's just for a
No.
small portion of the world. Open source typically. Um, sure, there are tools that are like I don't know, rabbit adding with an installer that you can just leave it out there and anybody can use it. But that means it's free and it's different from open source.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. I had a colleague for a brief moment who made a differentiation between open source and source open, and his definition of open source was that you actually have um, an active community around it, and that you accept contributions, and that you curate them and whatnot. And there is, and source open was just like, hey, I am putting some of source code out on a repo. You can use it, but I'm not supporting it, and I'm not really accepting contributions, or there's just not enough. There's just not enough, and like let's just say infrastructure around it for that, which I thought was kind of interesting because
Hmm.
um, I personally I like, source open. I like to share some stuff with people because not sometimes what it does is it allows me to get better confidence that what I'm doing is correct. Because if there's a bug, people can actually see the source and go, ah, found the bug. Here it is. Here's a fix. Um, I developed that attitude working at Autodesk when some of the clients of Autodesk asked for the source code to certain major products, let's say like Maya, and they say, please give us the source code. Because if they run into a bug, they couldn't wait for Autodesk to fix the bug and come back to them. They would fix it immediately, recompile, and then they would send the bug, the fix, to Autodesk to fix it. And I was like, well, that's a great way to move because they don't mind paying for the product, but it was a value add for them to actually have access to the source code so that they could find bugs, and it was beneficial, obviously, to Autodesk. So I realized that there was a business model around that. What do you think?
I mean, for me, it's kind of I think I'm a little bit frustrated with open source in general in the AC. I
Hmm.
feel that for other industries, not necessarily means that you're going to be successful, but it's a much broader market where there are more devs willing to contribute. Like if I'm doing an app that it's useful for everybody, like anybody can contribute to it and make it better. In our industry, I feel that there are not enough devs. Like the community is so small, just the people who knows how to, not scripting, who knows how to actually use a repo, analyze it, communicate properly on like, hey, I'm gonna do this specific feature, and I feel that there is not enough people out there. So it's so small that
Mm,
typically most of the AC open source projects that I know, they don't have many contributors. Even
mm.
like Dynamo or like the big ones. Like if you go to the repo, there are not that many people helping improve the platform. Sure, there are people creating nodes and scripts, but the actual platform, not that many.
Well, that's a really interesting point. I mean, it's a lot of overhead to, let's see, as a contributor to go, okay, I'm going to analyze the entire architecture and provide a fix for something that requires a lot of study. And unless you're like one of the original authors, what are the chances that it's even going to be a good, even if I'm an experienced coder, the chances that it fits into the style that they want, it's really hard from the point of view of people to contribute.
Yeah. And the expectations, like at least in my experience on all
Mm,
the open source projects that I created or I've been part of, I get more requests from people requesting features than from actual devs doing a pull request, sending me code.
yeah,
So it's even frustrating because you're putting something out there to get help, and instead you get requests from people.
yeah,
So
yeah,
it's
yeah,
it's just it's a double work.
yeah. Well, coming back to the frustration of being a contributor, I posted a story today on LinkedIn about how my very first open source contribution was in 2006. I submitted a library to Boost. And I went through the process of first vetting whether or not the library would be of interest, trying to figure out what the feature set would be. And I designed and implemented a library for ranged types. So let's say you say, I have an integer and it needs to be from 1 to 10 or 1 to 100. And so they had the policy. And I wrote up the library. It was pretty good. but then it was rejected. And it was rejected because the style was more of an object-oriented style, kind of like Java style programming, as opposed to like STL C++, where it's all generics and very, zero abstraction penalties. I got really disillusioned because it's like, why go through all the effort of submitting a library just to have it rejected? I mean, at the time I was young, it would have been like some good reputation for me to be a contributor to a project, but man, it was really hard to figure out to get that rejection.
No, it's also frustrating. I think it's like if you're a dub and you're beginning your career,
Mm,
I think it's a great way of learning. It's a great way of showing people what you can do.
yeah,
Um, Even if you're experienced developer, it's great just to have fun. Sometimes I contribute to projects just because I like the project, and I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna give you a hand, and I'm gonna have fun because I like to code. Um, but it's just that I'm not expecting anything in return.
mhm,
Compared to the business side, every time I try to do it on the business side, I feel it's so hard in our industry. I do really like, and I do really use a lot of like free libraries, like Nugget packages or JavaScript libraries, Node.js libraries. Like I use them a lot, but rarely I go into those any of those libraries and I contribute into them.
yeah, or sponsor, or I mean, how many
Yeah.
people actually like the sponsorship rates on popular projects is incredibly low. People say put up a Patreon, oh please give me some. There's there's virtually no money to be made doing that. It's incredibly hard for these people to monetize their packages. Right now, I put out a bunch of NuGet packages, and I'm just kind of like I'm at a point now where I'm going to just keep it simple. All of the code that I use, I'm going to put in one NuGet package. I'm going to use it in one of my projects. These are all of my open source, and I'll let people consume it if they want. But I'm not really I'm not going to be taking requests for features. I mean, I'll listen. I mean, if somebody wants to contribute feedback, sure. And then coming back to the submissions, I there's no way that I'm going to accept a submission that's of lower quality than what I would normally code myself. And I've got 30 years of programming under my belt, so the chances are that a random person on the internet contributing some code is up to my standard. It's a little low. Uh, it's just the way it is.
No,
So
it is.
yeah.
It's tough, and it's not as simple as just making something open source. I mean, I love the idea of everything being out there,
Mm,
and it's great, but I think that you need to have a lot of traction. You need to have the right people contributing into it. It's not that easy, and
yeah.
I don't know. We have good examples out there in the industry in general. I think we were speaking about like I think a great example is Elasticsearch, which is a database service that basically it was open source, and then Amazon took it and started selling a service based on it. And then Elasticsearch was like, "Hey, these guys are profiting and making a lot of money out of it. I need to start selling my software, so they have to pay for it." And I think that's also another big problem. Like, are you doing it because you're expecting to get something in return? And if you're not expecting something in return, don't get mad if somebody is profiting out of your code.
No, of course not. Yeah, I think the key thing is to identify the value. So coming back to what you were mentioning, that open source isn't for everybody, and that there's a lot of work even in consuming an open source project. You have to compile it, you have to link it, you have to validate it, and all of that. And what I do for my code is like, well, actually, the building of the product that I'm building, big chunks of it are open source, but the whole thing, it's a lot of work to put together. I'm putting it together myself, and I'll be giving a free version and then a premium version and whatnot, but that's actually closed because the bundling is a lot of work. Because the reason I'm bringing it up is because some people are scared, like, well, aren't you giving away your IP? I'm like, well, math libraries, some reading and writing, it's not really that valuable. And I'd rather put that stuff out in the open so that people can go, hey, wait a sec, your bounding box computation is wrong here, or it could be optimized. Cool, thank you. But I don't expect people to write the code for me.
Oh, and
And I don't want to
also,
get into the work of curating and managing a community. It's too much work.
no, absolutely. And it's also the fact that a lot of people create great projects that are open source, but then when you try to use it, it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare to compile it. It's a nightmare to deploy. And for me, it's just garbage. Like if you're not gonna provide me something good with good quality, I thank you for your service, but I rather prefer to do something from scratch. I don't care. Like, and that's a big reality. Like a lot of
It
people
is
think that
indeed.
because you have, oh, I have created 20 repos that are open source and anybody can use it, I'm a genius. Like if those repos don't are not easy to use, it's just garbage.
Well, it's garbage for somebody else. Might still have value for you, though.
True, that's different.
Yeah,
That's different.
yeah,
But
yeah.
if you're doing it open source, supposedly you're thinking that it's going to be useful for somebody else. But not judging because you're doing it free. But I do think that there is a way to um, basically make something open source and at the same time make a good business out of it. Um,
Hmm.
I think that there is a way to do that. It's just that I feel sometimes people get frustrated with situations like what happened with OpenAI. Right? OpenAI was supposed to be a non-profit organization, open source, and then they became a corporation. So I feel sometimes people get frustrated by those kind of examples, but I do feel that there are good examples out there, like Linux, for example,
Yeah,
or what Speckle is doing. I feel if we go into our industry of people who are doing open source, but at the same time are making a good business out of it. I don't know what you
yeah.
think about it.
Well, indeed, you can make a business out of it. I find how the word open is always like it's a that's usually a sign that something's not open. Open, like somebody says, "Hey, blah 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 is open." I was like, "Okay, can I see the source code?" Well, no. Wait, what? Like, I'm gonna throw a name. Open Design Alliance. Doesn't that sound great? Doesn't that sound open? So open source. There's nothing open source about what goes on. Anyway.
Well, I mean,
Um.
it's open if you're part of the. I think you can. It's a consortium, right? That if you pay money, you can be part of it, right?
That's called a business. It's I mean, that's like any
It's
business.
yeah.
My comment, my aside was that whenever you see the word open in a company's name or product name, it tends to be the opposite of it.
It's like
Um,
when people calling you a family on a business. If somebody is saying your business is a family, that's a red flag. Have you ever heard that?
yeah, yeah, it totally is.
Like, we're a
Yeah,
family. No, we're a business. We're not a family.
yeah. Well, I find one of the things that kind of frustrates me about people's attitudes about open source is that open is good and you should do open source, but then they don't really think about, well, how is it paid for? Like, who is putting all of the effort into maintaining this? And there's this weird expectation that programmers are somehow working in the evenings for free on all of these important projects that are used by lots of people who don't really appreciate it but consume it. I, I just don't understand why how people think that that's sustainable. Like, and then, like you say, you go online, you start to realize actually, when you become an experienced coder, you start to realize that the quality of open source libraries is not that great. And the reason for it is because there's just these are usually side projects by people who are sometimes doing it for cred or passion, but they don't really have the support and the infrastructure. They can't really put all of their time and energy into it because there is no financial reward for it, and their employers are not paying them full time to do that. So I think that a lot of projects would be better if there was people were being compensated fairly for them.
True. I think that that's what happened with most open source projects, and I do think there are exceptions, and sometimes people
Mhm.
get misled by it. Like I don't know, Python that it's supported by Google, or like these big libraries there, or programming languages that are open source and that are supported by big corporations. And that's amazing when those kind of thing happens, because you get both the best of both worlds, right?
But those are
The
fairy tales. Just to be clear, I mean, Python's been around since
yeah,
'92.
true.
I mean, it took forever, forever. It's like, yeah, everyone jumps on board once something's super, super popular, and then attaches their name to it and blah blah. But I mean, really, there. But there are some open source stories where there were some organizations like Bell Labs, Xerox Park, um, where they put the money where their mouth is, and they had researchers who were free to create really good high quality libraries, and those organizations funded people to do it, and said, look, go for it, you do what you need. And so you had the things like C and C++ and small
Well,
talk and all these
you
great
get
libraries.
amazing. Nowadays, you also get amazing. Like Meta, it's putting together Llama, and Llama, it's an amazing model, man, and you can just use it on your own, and they're giving it away. So I think nowadays there are also
Oh
great examples.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. And I think there are, I do think that, yeah, I just Google should never be given credit for Python. I mean,
well, no, not
yeah,
really.
Guido like did that himself, and then the
No,
community came in.
absolutely, absolutely.
But you're right. There are some great high quality libraries that came out of Google, and this is where I think open source makes sense. When you have a project that is of value to a larger community, like a part of what you do, not the whole thing. And there's two reasons why I like this. You take a project, like I remember I made a contribution to a Google sparse hash table many years ago. One of the driving technologies that Google has developed was hash tables, like at scale, and they had a performance problem that I found, and I contributed on a mailing list. But I thought that was really great because what they had done is they had made their hash table library open source. It was part of value that they had, but it was useful to the entire community. But they weren't giving away their business by saying, "Look, we're going to make our hash table library open source," because they got a contribution where I said, "Hey, look, your hash function is garbage. You can improve it." And I was just quoting from somebody else, and I not like using somebody else's hash libraries, and I did the benchmarking, and they were like, "Oh wow, you can get a 5x improvement by." The point was. Uh, and I did get invited to go to interview at Meta back then,
Nice.
but
Well,
I rejected them because I said, "Oh, they'll never be a big company." It was 2006.
you have
Facebook.
a great vision, man.
Yeah, I was like, Facebook. How are they going to build a business out of photos?
Don't ever mention this to a VC if you're pitching them a business idea. Like,
Yeah. The opportunity, I think it would have been number 6 at software engineer or something. That was the pitch. They were like, "Yeah, we need a startup like somebody on our team." I was like, "Bah." I'll be honest. To this day, I I don't regret it at all. Not It's not a business that really excites me. So
oh, that makes sense. You're here with us in the AEC, and that
loving it.
also, yeah, and that I mean, the stuff we do is it's so fun, but there's something that for me it's just something that it's frustrating. I don't even know if there is a single, at least that I am aware of. Maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, or anybody who's listening can correct me if I am wrong. But I'm not aware of a single product on the AC, open source, led by the community, that has triumphed out there. Not a single one. Led by the community, there is not a single one. The only one that I can think of that it's close enough, is Dynamo or Grasshopper. But the platform itself, it's like even when Dynamo was open source, it's like 99%
Dyn-
created by Ian and all his employees. So
yeah,
in the end, like I don't
and
even
the
know.
mesh libraries for Dynamo actually were Revit. It was using Revit geometry kernels, and so you couldn't do some of the interesting stuff. But again, I think that's a great model. Like, hey, this core tech is open source, go for it. You can use it, but you build your
Uh,
business around the more interesting parts, which is the holistic vision.
yeah, but I think my
Yeah,
point is, if we have not seen a single, like in the whole industry history of our industry, that can be open source and can be successful, like I'm not sure what's the problem out there if we don't have enough devs or whatever. But if you ask me, in our industry, it's not even worth it until it's proven. I'm proven wrong. Until there is a product that truly is open source and led by the community and is successful. My position is that it's not even worth it in general. Like it's worth it for marketing purposes. If you're gonna advance your career or you wanna learn something or have fun, sure. But otherwise, like you go to other industries, there are amazing great products that are open source and they have a lot of contributions. It's not happening in our industry. We don't have it.
yeah. But I think coming back to it, I still say that there are some key components. I think certain components should be open sourced, and you've got IFC OpenShell. I mean, that's a key library that drives a lot of stuff. There are some other components which are used, throughout. But can you build a business off of it? No, not necessarily. I mean, I don't understand how you could build a business which is community driven. Like, who this community are these old volunteers? I don't know. I don't understand how any of that could work. I
Yeah.
mean, it's hard for companies to say, well, we're going to pay for one of our software engineers to go and work on this project. What's interesting, though, is I'm taking this funny approach where I'm convincing people one by one to pay me to do open source contributions. And Speckle I said, look, I did some open source code. Here's some proof of concept. And Speckle says, that's great. Could you help us integrate it? Perfect. I did. They paid me some money. I built the library a little better, and I'm doing that. And you know, a couple other people are paying me, and I don't want to spoil it for them yet. I let them have their thunder, but there are people who are paying. But again, on a component level, can you build an entirely open source project? Well, I mean, there's Blender, but here's the truth.
True.
Blender's
Blender is not from the AEC, so
No, but
it's
it's got some applicability. Dion's out
true.
there working with
It's a
building
gray
bonsai
area.
BIM on it. But Blender, it's big, it's bloated, it's complicated. Nobody really understands the whole architecture. How are you going to really focus in and do something? Sometimes you're like, yeah, if I was going to do a Blender, I would just do it from scratch myself. Like I wouldn't try to take Blender and modify it because I'd be inheriting too much legacy. It would take me too long to try and figure it all out. So yeah, I agree. I don't think there's going to be a single open source product that is going to take over the industry. I don't think that makes sense.
Well, not over the industry, but at least be successful on a on a good level. I guess I agree on the example you provided about IFC OpenShell, that
Mm,
it's a great library used by a lot of people out there. If it is not one of the most used, to be honest. Um, but I guess our industry is more about that, like creating components and smaller libraries or tools for other use to other devs to use,
mm.
rather than you know something that is going to be huge. Like I don't know. I think Autodesk did that with APS. It's not open source. I know it's not open source.
They
Um,
did what? What did they do with
but
APS?
APS, instead of focusing on products like Revit, or like they started working on smaller APIs that do like just specific actions for the dev community to use. So if they're doing
Mm.
that, I guess they have faith that the community and the amount of devs in our industry is going to increase and they're going to be a bigger use for it in the future. I know it's not open source, but at least if they're doing that, not that they cannot be wrong, but I think there is a change coming in the industry where maybe maybe what we're speaking about in 10 years is going to be, or 5 years is going to be completely different, where there are going to be a lot of people using a lot of libraries like IFC OpenShell, and who knows, even the blender of the AEC.
Mm.
Maybe.
That's interesting. So, I mean, yeah, you can have communities spawn up around open APIs. What's interesting to maybe mention is that back in the day, the idea of even having your API open was actually taboo. Like a lot of products would say, "Oh, if we're not giving our API away unless you pay us money or you sign some like you are vetted by
Hmm.
us." And having closed APIs now seems a bit weird. Like who would do that? But today, I mean, obviously, SolidWorks still does that, and Dassault products. But I think there is a shift because people realize that you can't have all of the features in your product. Like you simply cannot have all the features for all the workflows. You need to have extensibility. And I think sometimes, maybe some of the parts of your libraries are also open source, can help encourage people to extend and build upon it. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that could be true, and that could also be a business strategy as at the same time.
Yeah.
Um, but I also, to be fair, I think a couple of things are also happening in the industry. Like a good example, I think it's that open company that um, they're getting a good traction and a lot of interest from the industry, at least from a marketing perspective. Like if you ask me, it's too early to use most of their technology because it's too early. It's too many complex. Every time I've tried to use it, it's not good enough for professional projects that we have tried to work on. To be honest, it's a great tool to play off and to learn. I think it's amazing what those guys are doing related to that. But every time I try to use their libraries on professional tools that I need to sell to our clients, I've not been able to do it because what they're doing, it's really complex and there are too many doing many things at the same time. But I think it's a good thing that we are getting enough traction. Would love to see projects like that get to a mature level, get mature enough to be used on actual professional
Well,
tools.
yeah, it's kind of funny because yeah, of course, people want awesome free stuff. Who doesn't? I mean,
Right.
of course, the community is excited. But then, if you want free stuff, who's funding the development? Who's paying for the for an experienced team of professionals to build this? And if people aren't spending the money, then we're so there's this kind of weird catch-22. It's like
Well,
we can't
you can
expect.
sell, you can
Yeah,
give the engine for free and sell the fuel.
yeah, 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 yeah. I think you have to. Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, that's what you've been encouraging me to do. It's like, yeah, get the users, offer the services, monetize them. Yeah, you don't have to give everything away,
Yeah,
but
or like even Speckle. I remember that when the whole thing was completely open source, and like they will just give the code for, like, make the code open source, but
yeah.
then you will have to deploy it on a server, manage the server, and most people either don't know how to do that, or either don't want to do that because that's a waste of time, and you don't have time when you're running a business. So
Or, or if you actually could do all of those things, you start to look at the source code and you go, it's very purpose driven. And if I have a different use case, I'm gonna have to build something else from scratch. So it's like, for example, I love Speckle team and I love what they're doing. But if you go into the source code, I can't reuse parts of it because it's just like, oh, it assumes everything is all part of the Speckle ecosystem. So there's not this well modularized thing that you expect from a really professional high end software development team. Mind you, that's kind of like an imaginary thing. I think in the real world, like not much software really follows best practices or proper software engineering principles.
true.
Honestly, I've never seen it. Even at Autodesk, I've worked on their source code. It was absolute garbage. it was just,
You've been
it
to
was just
me.
it was just violated all of the rules. And I was like, okay, we just had armies and armies of people patching holes on a boat, and like just imagine a leaky boat, and all of us were developers with buckets. Any one of us could have built a boat. Now we're all just like with buckets. It's
True.
the reality of software development is really funny. It took me many years to realize that you've got like this like when you study it, you study software engineering, computer science, you got this really lofty goals, and but then the reality of business is, well, you got to solve a business problem, you've got to address the user's needs, you got to do so in a timely manner, you got to have good ROI, and that's what really matters. And dollars, it takes, it's kind of a dollars and cents business. Like where people's money goes, that's where the issues are going to get fixed. And that's the whole problem with open source. It's like, well, nobody's paying for it. Well, we can't complain that it's not top quality, but we just have to be happy. But my gosh, I tell you, it's not it's if you're like me and you're trying to put food on your own table, and like you're just like, okay, both of us are people who have to figure out how we're going to feed ourselves, how we're going to have to pay our employees and feed our families. When you have to do that, all of a sudden your views on open source change a whole lot. When you're already at like you've got a high paying job at a university or an organization, of course you might be a little bit more how do you call that, idealistic.
It's easier. It's easier when somebody else is paying you to do it, and then you're not paying it out of your own pocket. No, that
Yeah.
absolutely. And I think you brought also a great. You brought something that's great. That the bigger the project, the the more garbage it is for other people, because like it's much more easy, it's much more harder to maintain, to modify, to that it's I'd rather prefer, like, even let's say Revit. If 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 Autodesk right now they would release 90% of the Revit code as open source, nobody would use it. Nobody.
No, but there's nothing you can, and you can't fix it. Like people ask for the most ludicrous things. Hey, make it multi-threaded. I was like, dude, you've never seen legacy source code. It's impossible. I can tell you that you would like try to fix a little bit of code in one spot and you try to do it right, and then all of a sudden something over here breaks. And it was just like you fix that and then something else over here breaks. And it was the most frustrating. I would just lose weeks and weeks and weeks of time.
Yeah, and that's the reality. If you tell people like I'm gonna do 90%, most people are gonna say I don't care. I just want 100%, so I can compile Revit and use it for free. So what you want, it's free software, not open source. It's not the
Yes,
same.
yes, 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 yes. I agree with that 100%. So I have
Which
an open source.
we all want free stuff, but
Yeah, I got a great open source story. One of the very first time somebody paid me to do programming was a university professor when I was in comp sci. I was doing pretty good in my comp sci classes, and I had a professor, and I went up to him and said, "Hey, you got any? I like coding. You got any interesting projects?" He said, "Yeah, I got one for you." It was a font editor. He used to do these fonts, and he would type in the code by hand. He's like, "I want a visual way to do this." Like he literally wrote the equations describing the outlines of the fonts. It was bonkers. He was a genius, mad genius. Now, at the end of the project, I was finished up, and it was supposed to be for $900. They said, "Okay, cool, I'm done. Here you go." And I said, "Well, so do you get the source code licensed, or is it, you just get to use the software and I keep the what should we do here?" And he got mad at me. I'm like in a second year comp sci student, and the professor's getting mad at me. He says, "My God, how could you ask such a thing? It must be open source. You should always give it away. I don't want to have anything to do with you ever again. Take your money and leave." I was like, "Whoa." He was a bit, like he was touched, but he was brilliant. Um, I of course made it open source, and afterwards, learned what open source was because I had no clue.
your professor name was Linus and his last name was Torvald by any chance?
But I realized too is like from where this person had been, they had been in academia their whole life, and they had always had food on the table because of grants. Like they were brilliant. They worked hard for it. I don't, and but they for them it was easy. Yeah, we give away our stuff for free, and I, from an academic standpoint, I really believe in that. I think it's great. I think they should do that. But you know, uh, where does that money come from? And when you're a software developer, I mean, my time's precious. I can't do stuff for free.
I think if I need to suggest somebody to do open source, you need to do it for a specific reason. I think when there is a reason to do it, like, hey, you know what? I'm gonna do it for marketing purposes because I want
Yeah.
to get a lot of people following me. Great reason. I
Yep.
want to do it because I want to show what I'm doing. Great reason. I'm gonna do it because I don't know. I'm gonna release it for free so many people can use it, and then I have a lot of users, and then I can sell those people, I don't know, a service. So if you're doing it for specific reasons to get something out of it, and it is worth it, the hours you put into it versus what you're getting, it's great you do it. If you're just
Yeah.
doing it because you believe the world it's going to be a better place if the whole thing you do it's open, for me it just doesn't make any sense. That's my, I think, my 2 cents out of all this conversation is that if you're doing it, do it for a specific reason and it makes sense. Because if it's going to take you a year and you're just going to not get too much out of it, is it even worth it? So you need to analyze the effort versus what you're going to get out of it and then do it, if that makes sense. If not, for me, at least personally, I would never do it.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. And another reason, like I'll say I do it from a business standpoint, is to build confidence with my customers. Sometimes I say, look, my tech's so awesome, this will avoid you vendor lock-in. And that's something customers are very scared about, especially when they're transitioning to a new supplier. So you're selling a such product that's different from somebody else, and they're scared that what if they get locked into you, and then all of a sudden you raise the rates by 5x, or you go out of business. And these are things that people have valid fears about. And being open source on key components, on formats, open source formats, and not just open formats, but also like open readers and writers so that they can build on that. That's a smart strategy. I agree with you. Be aware of why you're doing it. There's a learning benefit. Another reason I actually promote it within certain teams that I manage is because it helps people to understand modularity. When people write code as if they're writing open source libraries that are going to be consumed by other people, they write better quality code.
Mm.
Otherwise, what they do is they take everything and they just shove it all together, and it's a big old mush of paper and whatever, and it's effing garbage. Most code out there is garbage. But if you think about it in terms of components that are have to be consumed by people and you have that practice, oh, then you start writing much better code. So I often think about a project. What if it wasn't a repo? Now I have to be very clear about I manage my dependencies. I think about what does it depend on and how are people going to consume it? And how do I get it to a point where it stops changing so that you can isolate the component, you can reach a stability point, and you can do that with the other things. This practice, now this is pretty high discipline, like to be able to do that. And like for a small project, well, it's bonkers. I still always do it because I am bonkers and I'm obsessed with high quality. But in the long run, oh my God, my libraries are really tight and really reusable as a result of that. So if I know I'm engaging on a larger project, this is what I encourage people to do. It depends on the scope of what you're doing. And like I said, component-oriented architecture, where your software components are small, decoupled, it really, really pays off. And then some of those can actually be released as open source without any impact to the overall team. Because hey, but putting everything by default open source, demanding everything open source, don't
Yeah.
without thinking, I don't agree with it.
Yeah.
And
No
besides,
bueno.
yeah, most open source code isn't that good anyway.
You're too mean. But it's true.
Oh gosh, I
Most of the
call it
code,
like this.
like,
Yeah,
like you don't have time. Like I put open source code out there that is garbage as well. So
yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh no.
um, but I think it's a great way to uh, finalize this conversation. And I thank all the people who've been patiently hearing us. And in 3 weeks, we're gonna be speaking about what you need to become a professional software developer in the AEC. So I think that's going to be a great conversation where we create different paths and get into the details of what's needed on each of those different paths. So I think it's
Without
going to be exciting.
Yeah, 100%. Without any, we have nothing to sell you, and we're not going to be giving you lies and BS about that. We're going to tell you the hard truths of what you need to learn, because I think some people walk in and some people are saying, "Oh, you can learn this in 6 months." I'm like, "Sorry guys, it's going to take you a little longer." But like you said, there are different paths, and I'm excited to discuss those opportunities with you.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for your time and for the time of everybody. And I will be seeing you the next time. All right.
All right, great. Thanks a
Okay.
lot, Valentin.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.